So, you're new to Pokemon Unite and you don't know who you want to main. Well, do you want to be the primary healer of the team? Play the game while watching The Office for the 100th time on your monitor and not even really paying attention to the game itself? Get blamed for letting your laner die when they make a dumb decision? Not even using tanky items and somehow not only being tankier but harder to kill than Wigglytuff? Well, it sounds like Eldegod, the healing support, is for you. So, for those unfamiliar with the Pokemon, Eldegod is the final evolution of the Gossifleur line and arrives to the battlefield from the distant islands of Galar. In Pokemon Unite, it is, as of writing and posting this video, the only traditional support healer in the game, which by default makes it the best support in almost every single situation. You need heals? You got it. You need shields? Good old 80 has that too. You need CC? Well, good news, Eldegod has like 3 different moves for that. You need emotional support for those days where you come back home from work just hoping to hop onto Pokemon Unite only to have 2 junglers, you in a solo bot lane, and an enemy haunter that is eating the ass out of the top lane? Well, Eldegod has that too. I mean, just look at that floof on top of its head. Imagine how nice it is to just snuggle and cry into it when you're feeling down. Anyway, my ranked experience aside, point being, Eldegod is arguably the best support in the game with how flexible its kit is, and you can make changes to it on the fly and still have a big effect on the game. This is also boosted by the fact that it is one of the few Pokemon in the game that evolves at level 4, going from Gossifleur to Eldegod, which means that you don't have to wait that long before you hit a major power boost. With this in mind, this 2-foot-tall menace, when played correctly, will keep your team alive for those big team fights, and its first passive helps with this fact. Eldegod first ability is an on-hit passive that makes it so that every third auto attack slows the opponent down and causes them to take more damage while they are slowed. This passive basically allows you to more easily chase down and kill your enemies in early engagements, as once that slow is applied, you'll find that most people aren't ready to take the extra damage for when your laner follows up to protect you and possibly turns the fight into your favor. Speaking of turning fights, we move on to Eldegod passive ability. This ability makes it so that upon taking lots of damage within a small window of time, Eldegod reflects some of that damage back, as well as healing Eldegod, increasing your movement speed, and slowing the opponent. This passive is utterly insane with how much is packed into it, and can buy Eldegod enough time to either run away or trigger one of its abilities to help increase its sustainability and survivability, while also slightly punishing the opponent for trying to jump Eldegod. As for Gossifleur's first 2 abilities that they get at the beginning of the game, the first is Leafage, a ranged skill shot ability with a cooldown of 4.5 seconds normally that throws a flurry of leaves that slows and damages the opponent. This is the move that you will pretty much always be going first with, as it not only allows you to finish off wild Pokemon with your laner faster, but also allows you to harass and trade hits with the opposing team when you eventually encounter them in lane. The other skill Gossifleur can learn at first is Synthesis, an AoE heal with an 8-second cooldown that heals every ally within its circle of effect. This is pretty self-explanatory, and this is one of the primary reasons why this mod can be frustrating at times to face, as not only can you get healing from the goal and the citrus berries in the back, but now you have a consistent, unlimited heal on command that makes your lane sustain early on utterly ridiculous. All things considered, these 2 moves are great for early lane sustain and poke, and allow you to consistently harass the opponent while also being able to heal yourself and your ally, not only winning you trades, but also possibly winning you early fights, which is pretty good. And these are the 2 moves you are stuck with until you hit level 4 and eventually evolve into Eldegod, in which Leafage is replaced by one of the following moves. The first being Pollen Puff, a placement heal/damage move with a 5-second cooldown that can possibly attach itself to an ally or an enemy, of which it does 2 different things depending on who's within its radius when it explodes. For allies in the explosion radius, it heals them, while enemies in the explosion radius end up taking damage. When later upgraded, allies will also receive a defense buff, while enemies take damage over time. This is the one that you'll see most people going with a majority of their time playing, as it not only allows you to temporarily have 2 healing moves in the early game while also having a damage move, it just allows you so much flexibility in lane, as one well-placed Pollen Puff can either save an ally or kill an enemy, sometimes at the same time, leaving this to be the arguably best option that you have between the two moves you gain at level 4. The other being Leaf Tornado, an AoE skill shot with a 9-second cooldown that blasts a tornado of leaves towards the opponent, that leaves a trail behind it where any ally who walks in it gets a temporary speed boost for as long as they stay within the trail. The upgraded version of this acts as a blind for opponents hit by the tornado. And compared to Pollen Puff, this is kinda just underwhelming, as while yes, the theme of simultaneously harming enemies and assisting allies is there, it just doesn't measure up to the fact that Pollen Puff heals and damages potentially at the same time as long as they're within the explosion radius, and the fact that Pollen Puff is placeable anywhere, even through walls, kinda makes it so that unless you want to run a pure damage build on a support, it just doesn't measure up at all to the flexibility of Pollen Puff. Not saying that it's a bad move, it's just most of the time, Pollen Puff is just flat out better. The next time one of your moves will be replaced is at level 6, where Synthesis goes away in return for one of these two attacks. The first of which being Cotton Guard, a move where you temporarily shield everyone within a similar radius to Synthesis, and after a certain amount of time, whatever is left of the shield becomes health, effectively acting as both a shield and a heal with a cooldown of 7 seconds. When upgraded, it also increases the movement speed of everyone shielded. And there is no contest. This is the best of the two moves you have to choose from when you reach level 6, as there is no limit as to how many people you can shield, and in theory, this can also act as a team-wide heal while also buffing movement speed later on in the game when you have its upgrade. To add on to this, it makes running Leaf Tornado actually viable, as you won't be completely without heals and lane sustain if you take Leaf Tornado and Cotton Guard. You'll just simply be criticized for not taking Pollen Puff, but for good reason, because with melee characters, this can act as a shield and a heal when combined properly with a well-placed Pollen Puff, as they have the shield from the Cotton Guard to negate damage, and if within the Pollen Puff, they also have extra heals and damage, making it a great combination to use when in team fights. The other move you can choose is Cotton Spore. This move gives you increased defense for the duration of the move while spawning a circle of spores around Eldegod, and when time is up, explode, knocking up enemies and causing damage to all nearby opponents while also slowing them. This move also has a 10-second cooldown. When upgraded, it increases the amount of defense gained when using this move. Now, the move itself is really great, as it synergizes really well with your passive, as if someone tries to burst you down and doesn't finish you instantly while you have this move up, they can be in for a nasty surprise at the amount of damage they'll be taking from both the passive and this move combined. The issue, however, comes with the fact that it's a selfish move, as it doesn't really help your team that much, and is only really good at having you survive the fight a bit longer, which would be fine if Cotton Guard didn't exist. Cotton Guard absolutely knocks this move out of the park, as with Cotton Guard it is possible to provide a full team shield and heal compared to the buffs that this move solely gives to Eldegod. It's just not worth running at the moment, and I would always recommend running Cotton Guard, as that's just going to come more in clutch more often. Finally, when you reach level 9, you'll learn your ultimate move, aka your Unite move, Cotton Cloud Crash. Besides sounding like a Final Fantasy spell, this move is an AoE ultimate where Eldegod decides the best way to save its allies is to nope out of the battlefield by flying up and out of range, gaining a minor speed boost before deciding to come barreling back down to the battlefield like a raging meteor, dealing damage and displacing any opponents within the range of the ground slam, while also healing allies within that radius. Yeah, This move is actually insane, as it not only works as a tool to reposition yourself in a fight with no worry as you are untargetable within the air, but it's also a really good way to disperse and displace enemies while also healing allies in a team battle. It's also even good for chasing enemies down, as while they're running away, you can just pop this, get right in front of them, and knock them back towards the Pokemon that they were running away from. It's just a really good ultimate that has the potential to turn a team fight around in your favor, and this isn't even accounting for how good this ult can get with items like Buddy Barrier or Energy Amplifier. It's just a really solid ultimate, and once again, it's really flexible in the way that it benefits allies and damages enemies. And those are all of the parts of Edelgast's kit. So, what do I think? Overall, Edelgast's kit lends itself to a more relaxing playstyle, as the main attack you really just have to worry about is Pollen Puff and where you place it. Other than that, the person controlling Edelgast can simply just sit back, relax, auto-attack, and just heal and shield when needed. It's really that simple, which often leads to one of the problems that Edelgast has: its simplicity. It makes it really easy for people to get really complacent with this mon, and not only that, but there's not really any room for flashy play aside from your ultimate, making this Pokemon for some people a really boring one to play. It's also the fact that they're the only healer at the moment, and this puts it in a sticky spot as it's in danger of getting overshadowed heavily when we inevitably get a more flashy healer or flashy support who can do Edelgast's job better. Ultimately, Edelgast's kit is good. And it's good for what I said earlier, its simplicity and its flexibility. The fact that so many of Edelgast's moves can not only benefit your allies but harm the enemies at the same time makes this mon a real force to be trifled with, and one to not be taken lightly with that passive especially. And it's all these things combined, and it becomes really clear why Edelgast is arguably the best support out there at the moment, even though it probably mainly has that due to the fact that the other supports aren't as good. But with that out of the way, let's get into the really good items and moves that you can run together with the Cotton Menace. For the most part, you want to be running Edelgast as a support. In this case, you will be running Buddy Barrier for the passive that activates as soon as you activate your ult, XP Share for obvious reasons as you won't be taking a majority of the mons, and Energy Amplifier for that extra bit of cooldown and damage when you activate ult once again. This build basically allows you to have massive increases in HP, movement speed, and as well as shortening your cooldowns. This also makes it so that way when you ult, you hit harder with more damage afterward, as well as giving the lowest HP ally in the vicinity of the ult a shield for possibly 40% of their max health, which is insane and can single-handedly allow for a DPS to finish off an enemy or maybe even make a Snorlax near impossible to kill. However, this build is pretty flexible with that third item slot, where you could replace the Energy Amplifier for something more like Shell Bell for lane sustain and damage, or Assault Vest to deal with early poke from special attackers, as well as making you more tankier in the early game. For abilities, I'd probably have to say that you're gonna want to run Pollen Puff and Cotton Guard, simply due to the fact that they make you and your team nearly unkillable, especially when you're in the lead. For DPS abilities, I'd suggest Leaf Tornado and Cotton Guard, as when Cotton Guard is upgraded, it also provides a speed boost, giving you the ability to help your teammates reposition and chase down the opponents much easier and much more consistently, while also allowing yourself to keep your allies alive. And that's pretty much all I can say about building a good Edelgast. Overall, my final thoughts on Edelgast is that it's a really good support mod and is arguably the best support mod in the game. But this is also to its weakness, as it's mainly the best support mod because its competition at the moment is really underwhelming, as Wigglytuff is more focused on disruption and CC displacement, while Mr. Mime is more meant for trapping and blocking off the opponents, with both of these characters also having learning curves to overcome in order to be effective. This kinda leaves Edelgast as the only one who is dedicated to keeping the team alive in the most traditional way of giving shields and heals, while also being the easiest one to use of the three, and to even learn of the three, therefore by default making it the best support in the game. However, I must reiterate, this leaves Edelgast in a very sticky spot, as As we begin to get more healers in the game, it is very possible that this mon could be overshadowed due to the fact that, like I said, most people do not find this mon engaging to play at all. Not to mention, its best way to heal is not instant like Synthesis is, meaning all that it really takes to upstage Edelgod's healing potential right now is just for something like Synthesis to come out on a much more bigger and consistent level. Right now, it is the best in the game. There is no denying that at this point. But in the future, it's kind of looking shaky. However, I would still not let that dissuade you from maining this Pokemon, mainly due to the fact that, once again, its kit is just so easy and simple to use while also being really flexible. While yes, it might be boring to play to some people, it is also really, and I mean really effective in what it does in keeping teammates alive. And that's why, in my opinion, even though there might be mons that come out that overshadow this one, this Pokemon is really easy enough to learn and get down that I can see it living out comfortably throughout the rest of the game's life cycle. And that is how you play the Eldegod.